from John's Gospel, chapter 6, beginning at verse 1. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages wouldn't buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself.
Well, thank you, Jenny. That's, I guess, one of the better known stories in the Gospels, and interesting, it's one that's found in all 4 Gospels, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I was struck again by the lovely details you get there. You know, there was a lot of grass.
Yeah, I noticed the smile as you read.
Yeah, I was thinking back to when I was in Galilee, and you've got my little loaves and fishes there. Yeah. I always think the little breads are like hot cross buns,
Yeah.
but
Not allowed to have hot cross buns in New Zealand.
well, that's right. But
Easter buns.
Easter buns. But just a reminder, I mean, just those little things, you know, just how sort of, there's something small that little boy offered, and which we would have probably disregarded, and yet Jesus was able to use that. Yeah.
It's become such an important passage, hasn't it? This whole story, the feeding of the 5,000, and it's overlaid with all sorts of different connotations and meanings, and one of them actually we're not going to tease out this time, but we might do it in next week when we look at a little bit more of John's Gospel, which is to do with the Passover and the whole desert thing. But I wonder actually if we shouldn't start, Jenny, with one of these other pictures that you've got here, this one. Let me get it. Because this brings it very, I like this. You'll remember last year we started a campaign, or became part of a campaign called Back to Church Sunday. And this was the picture that they used. And it took me ages to realise that what it was is actually the feeding of the 5,000 in a modern context.
Yes.
Sitting on grass, eating fish and chips.
Yeah, and it's a lovely sort of. I don't think it is Kiwi actually as such,
no,
but
it's not.
But just that idea, which I think is a very sort of Kiwi sort of thing of the barbecue or something like that we're comfortable with, of actually, you know, sharing, and because so often we talk now about not even knowing our neighbours, or, you know, and you can imagine in this sort of context of, and this intriguing thing that Jesus almost sort of tests them. What are you going to do about this situation? You know,
6 months' wages.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money. That's 200 denarii in the note. Denarius was a wage for a day.
And so, thinking just of the, you know, being away from the townships, and almost like, what are you going to do? Are you actually going to, you know, it's so easy just to say, well, send them off. You know, this is in the too hard basket, let's just send them off. But actually, that sort of tantalising thing of, I like the way of using a child, someone quite powerless within that society, probably disregarded, probably would have been just sent away. The sort of one that the disciples wanted to send away. It actually makes the disciples look a bit better here, because Andrew and Philip actually, they draw in that child.
Is there, you've spent time in Israel, is there any significance in the barley loaves?
Apparently, yeah, it's very much just what the sort of food that the poor would have had. Yeah.
So it's the staple food.
Yeah, basic.
Not
again,
wheat, as opposed to wheat, which would have been presumably rich.
Yes, the higher sort of level.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really sort of saying, Jesus is going right out to the margins and including someone who, wouldn't have even been thought about in that society, disregarded.
Right. And yet he's the catalyst.
Yeah, and I like to think, well, actually the disciples got it right this time. The other time they tried to send the children away, but this time they actually brought that little boy in, didn't push him away.
Which is an interesting, perhaps a little bit of talking there too, the role of the disciples, which again, it's both, was Philip and Andrew are both involved here, aren't they, in this great big crowd of people. Are they protecting Jesus, or are they doing something else? What do you think there?
Well, I think in this case they actually seem to be offering more what Jesus would do, to invite other people in and to include other people in. So, because I think later on we get the same two who are welcoming the Greeks who want to see Jesus.
Oh, certainly,
So, and of course this part of the world, Galilee of the Gentiles, you've got them reaching out to the fringes and drawing in.
Which I rather like that connection that we had with that picture earlier, the Back to Church Sunday. And my understanding is that more and more churches are picking this up, this idea of setting aside a Sunday, where people who have been part of the church and have, for whatever reason, have disappeared, are invited by the Andrews and the Philips in the congregation to say, hey, come back.
And the challenge to us, perhaps, is how do we receive people who are coming back in from the fringes? Do we want to keep all the bread for ourselves? Do we want to keep the picnic for ourselves? Or will we actually open up our fish and chips and share the goodies?
As you're talking, I'm thinking about catering call and the horror that they're going to be. I said, please, Frank, don't bring any more people to be fed. But that is what it's about.
It's about that abundance, isn't it? And sort of thinking in our community at the moment, there's a drive going on for the City Mission, and we're talking about the food banks and things. And people are struggling, people are retrenching, and yet it's good to hear there's still that spirit of generosity.
The generosity that is there. And of course, food is such a major issue in the world, and the wherewithal to grow food and to distribute food. I think, I don't know whether it's anecdotal or whether it's fact, but one hears that there actually is enough food in the world. It's a matter of how to get it from A to B, and who eats how much food. Again, I remember reading somewhere that Americans, where meat is the staple product, eat far more grain than they do in Asia, where rice is the staple, through their meat, through eating grain-fed animals.
And I think that gather up the fragments left over, so we have been so wasteful, particularly in the West, and just thinking about the old concept of gleaning, but also leaving a bit, leaving a bit for those, for the immigrant, the stranger, and maybe we're learning even in our sort of straitened circumstances that part of that sharing and.
Do you think this is an actual miracle, or do you think what is the miracle here? I've got two theories. I think. I mean, traditionally we take it, Jesus blessed, and that's wonderful, and suddenly there's all this food around. And that's one thing, and of course God as the creator presumably can do that. But there's almost a bigger miracle if you think that this little boy, through his generosity, in a way shamed all those other people to say, well, actually, we do have a picnic lunch attached away here, and bring it out and sharing it. And I actually quite like that.
I can live quite comfortably either way, I think. Many will say it was a miracle that they actually started sharing with each other and were able to, and that there was more than that. I think that sort of superabundance that comes in. There's not any sort of...
runneth over.
It's not frugality or not, it's generous. Not wasteful, but it's generous, and there's more to share.
Do we need to make just a very quick comment about that last verse 15, where Jesus realised they were about to come and take him by force to make him king? In that, as so often in the Gospels, people don't quite get who Jesus is.
They get carried away with the excitement of all this, but...
And so he disappears, he withdraws himself to the mountain. And withdrew again to the mountain.
And just for another time, really.
Let's go and have some fish and chips.
That sounds good.
Why not?